The popular idea of a monster is often that of a grotesque figure, an outcast whose evil is clearly shown on their face. We imagine someone whose eyes show a troubled soul, a person whose very presence sends shivers down your spine. This comforting idea lets us believe we could spot danger from far away, that evil announces itself before it strikes. However, the chilling truth about serial killers completely shatters that idea. They aren't always hooded figures lurking in the shadows of our imagination. More often, they are true masters of trickery, hiding their horrible urges behind a carefully built front of complete normalcy. They are the quiet neighbor, the friendly co-worker, the devoted family member. They walk among us, unseen and unsuspected. They take part in the everyday routines of daily life, offering a warm smile to people passing by or making polite small talk at the grocery store. They have jobs, pay their taxes, and have relationships fitting right into the very fabric of society. This chameleon-like ability to blend in is their most powerful weapon, a shield that protects their dark secrets from the world's curious eyes. They've learned to wear a mask of normalcy so convincing that no one around them suspects the deep darkness hidden beneath the surface. This unsettling truth forces us to face a difficult question. If they look like us, how can we really know who lives next door? This essay begins a journey into the most disturbing parts of the human mind. We are going to peel back the layers of normalcy to show the terrifying ways a serial killer's mind works. Our exploration doesn't start with the bloody results of their crimes, but with the deceiving quiet that comes before them. We will look at the unsettling difference between their public image and their private reality, a double life that allows them to hunt without raising suspicion. We will focus on understanding the psychology of their hidden life, exploring how a person can live two such completely different lives, one of light and one of absolute unimaginable darkness. The silent, empty street at night tells its own story. It speaks of a violent and sudden break in peace, a calm shattered in an instant. The red and blue lights of the patrol cars paint the scene with urgency and sadness, their silent flashes witnessing the horror that has happened. A single shoe left on the sidewalk becomes a disturbing symbol of a life suddenly taken, a person who was there one moment and gone the next. Finally, the image of hands in handcuffs shows a somber ending, the end of a reign of terror. However, these images only show the final act. Our real investigation must go beyond the police tape and into the mind where it all began. The real terror of a serial killer isn't just about how violent they can be, but about the huge mental gap that separates them from everyone else. They're not just broken. They are built differently deep down. They smile, they work, they greet their neighbors with a charm that puts you at ease, all while hiding a deep, scary emptiness inside. They do the things a normal person does, but they do it without the feelings that guide how we act. This is what makes them monsters, their ability to pretend to be human while missing the most important human qualities, like caring about others, feeling sorry, and having kindness. In the daytime, they are just like us. But when night comes, they drop the act and turn into something completely different. This change isn't a sudden snap or a quick loss of control. It's a slow, planned journey into being a predator. The darkness they live in isn't just a lack of light. It's a mental place where their deepest, most violent thoughts can grow. It's here, in this inner world, where they plan, practice, and perfect their deadly rituals. This talk is about exploring that process. What happens in the mind when the mask comes off? How does a seemingly normal person cross the line to become a hunter of people? We're going to dive into the cold logic, the twisted excuses, and the never-ending urges that lead them to commit the worst crimes. The journey we're about to take is unsettling, and it makes us face the most disturbing parts of being human. It's an attempt to map out the confusing parts of a mind that works with totally different rules of right and wrong and feelings. We'll try to understand where their sickness comes from, how their double life grew, and the brain and mind factors that allow their awful acts. This is more than just a list of crimes. It's a deep dive into the why and how. It's a close look at a mind that is completely cut off from the values that hold society together. A mind that finds meaning not in connecting with others, but in destroying. The main idea of our study can be summed up in one unsettling thought. They don't always have a creepy look. This simple statement breaks down our old ideas and forces us to accept a reality that is much more complicated and scary. The monster could be the man who helps you with your groceries, the woman who compliments your garden, the person you trust. This exploration is all about understanding what happens when that kind face turns away and the hidden self comes out. We are going deep into the mind of a serial killer, a place where the rules of caring don't apply and the value of human life has been wiped out. This is the story of the predator who hides in plain sight. A serial killer's start is rarely a sudden event. It's a slow, sneaky process of wearing down, which often begins in the very first years of life. The mind of a monster isn't born fully formed, but is carefully shaped by the hands of its surroundings. For many who end up doing these terrible things, childhood isn't a safe and warm place, but a dry, empty field where the seeds of caring don't sprout. It's a landscape marked by not getting enough emotional and physical care, a place where the basic needs for love, safety, and feeling valued are always denied. This early lack creates a deep emptiness, an emotional hole that will later be filled with anger, fantasies, and a hunger for control. These growing up years are often a constant lesson in human cruelty. Instead of learning kindness, the child learns that the world is a mean and unpredictable place. They become quiet watchers of violence, seeing fights at home that make aggression seem normal, and teach that power comes from physical force. They might be constantly physically punished, beaten not to correct them, but to break their spirit. This constant exposure to meanness makes them numb, stripping them of their natural ability to care and replacing it with a cold, calculating understanding of pain as a tool. The home, which should be a safe place, becomes their first training ground in how to make others suffer. Emotional neglect is often more harmful than physical abuse itself. A child who is ignored, rejected, or treated with no care learns a terrible lesson: that they are not important, invisible, and basically not worthy of love. This deep feeling of being alone becomes a prison with no escape. They pull back into themselves, building walls around their heart to protect themselves from more pain. This self-chosen exile from human connection is where the most dangerous changes happen. Alone with their growing anger and confusion, they start to build an inner world where they are no longer helpless victims, but powerful builders of their own dark realities. Serial killers, then, don't just appear out of nowhere or from nothing. They are made in the harsh conditions of a broken youth. The shadows of their childhood are long and stifling, casting a permanent darkness over their growing minds. The patterns are strangely consistent in many cases: a history of severe abuse, deep neglect, and a setting without any emotional care. This harmful beginning doesn't excuse their future actions, but it gives a key map to understanding where they came from. The dry field of their early years is where the first seeds of the monster are planted, watered by tears and fed by pain, waiting for the right time to grow. As the damaged child's inner world becomes their only safe place, they often start to try out ideas of power and control in the only ways they can. This often shows up as being mean to those who are even more helpless: animals and insects. The careful crushing of insects or hurting small animals isn't just kid mischief, it's practice. It's the first clear sign of a growing wish to have the power they've been denied. In these small acts of destruction, the child finds a nearly godlike power over life and death. They are no longer the victim, but the one doing the harm, and that feeling is amazing, giving them a quick fix for their own helplessness. This early meanness is a big step on the road to becoming a killer. It shows a change in how they think and feel, where another being's pain stops making them feel bad and starts to bring them joy or just a cold interest. Hurting others becomes a way to calm themselves, a way to let out the huge anger and frustration building up inside them. Each act teaches them again that they can control their world and the people in it by force. This behavior is usually a clear and worrying warning sign, a red flag that shows a deep change in the child's ability to connect with and value life, beyond seeing it as something for their own use. The loneliness that shapes their life further fuels these dark explorations. Stuck in their rooms or pushed away by other kids, they have plenty of time to grow their violent daydreams. This being alone stops them from growing normal social skills and learning to handle their feelings. While other kids learn how to get along, feel for others, and work together through playing and being with others, the future killer learns to deal with the world through eyes that see only hunting and control. Their fantasy life gets more and more detailed and violent, a private stage where they can act out their wishes for revenge and power without any bad results. This inner world becomes more real and satisfying than the painful real life they live in. This way of acting, the mix of being alone, having fantasies, and early acts of cruelty, forms the basic structure of a serial killer's mind. It's a blueprint for future violence. Being shut in, being pushed away, and deep loneliness are not just quiet background things, they are active parts in making a predator. They are learning to separate from their own pain by making others feel it. They are getting really good at not caring about feelings. This is the stage where the human part starts to disappear, and the cold, careful killer begins to form, practicing their skills in small ways before moving on to human victims. For them, the act of killing isn't a terrible wrongdoing, but a logical step, even a necessary one, to meet a deep need that started long ago, in the shadows of their youth.
This complete lack of human emotion is the key that lets them kill again and again without being stopped by guilt. They develop a cold and practical view of other people. Later on, this same way of thinking that helped them survive a tough childhood allows them to make sense of murder. It's not that they don't know their actions are wrong by society's rules, they just don't care. Their inner moral compass is broken beyond repair.
Their lack of feeling allows them to completely strip others of their humanity, seeing them as tools for their own satisfaction, whether it's power, sexual pleasure, or meeting a strong urge. The victim's terror and suffering are just data points, not a shared experience that would cause horror or regret in a healthy mind.
This creates a gap that can't be closed between them and the rest of humanity, making them feel even more different and alone in the world. This deep lack of connection is the psychological base on which their future crimes are built. It becomes the ultimate reason for their actions, when the victim isn't seen as another person with a rich inner life, but as a simple object or symbol. Causing pain and death becomes morally and emotionally meaningless.
This way of surviving, while it works for a short time, has terrible consequences in the long run. By cutting ties with their own feelings, they lose the tools needed to understand and connect with other people's feelings. Empathy, the ability to feel what someone else feels, becomes a strange idea. They might understand that others feel joy, sadness, or fear, but they can't share that feeling. Human emotions become a foreign language they can watch, but never truly speak.
This isn't a choice they make, but a desperate way to survive. When pain, fear, and shame are always there, the only way to handle it is to stop feeling anything at all. The child learns to numb their emotions, creating a buffer between their mind and the unbearable reality of their life. That detachment becomes a lasting part of who they are.
The constant trauma of a tough childhood forces the growing mind to build strong mental walls to survive. The most important of these walls is emotional detachment, a state of deep disconnection from one's own feelings and, by extension, from the feelings of others. The most unsettling thing about many serial killers isn't how obviously strange they are, but how deeply and deceptively normal they seem. Unlike the movie image of the wild-eyed crazy person, most aren't social hermits or clearly disturbed people who stand out in a crowd. Actually, they are masters of disguise, weaving a normal appearance that is convincing and, at the same time, scarily ordinary. They keep steady jobs, have hobbies, and build relationships with family, friends, and partners. This careful building of a public image is their biggest asset, a mask that lets them move through society without being noticed, hiding their awful urges under a calm and unremarkable surface. This is their double life. This two-sided nature isn't by chance. It's a smart and necessary plan. The killer understands in a practical way that to keep their secret activities going, they must follow society's rules. They do the daily rituals of life with precision. They wave to neighbors with a smile, bring flowers to their mom on Sundays, or volunteer at community events. Each of these ordinary actions is a brick in the wall of their fake front, making people think they are stable and harmless members of society. This act doesn't come from wanting real connection, but from a cold, calculated need to create an alibi for their soul, making sure no one looks too closely to notice the cracks. The power of this mask is in how completely normal it is. We are taught to think danger comes from being different from the usual, to look for warning signs in strange behaviors or being alone. The serial killer uses this way of thinking to their advantage. By seeming completely normal, they become invisible to society. Their co-workers see a dependable employee. Their family sees an excellent son or husband, and neighbors see a calm and nice person. No one suspects that the same person who shares the elevator with them, in the hidden hours of the night, carefully cleans a knife in the shadows, their mind filled with thoughts of control and death. The difference is huge, and that is their best protection. This ability to keep two such different identities separate is a key part of their mind. They handle their public life with an uncaring skill, keeping their violent world completely separate and sealed off. It proves their deep emotional detachment. They don't feel the inner conflict or guilt that would stop a healthy person from living such a divided life. For them, the mask isn't a heavy burden, but a useful tool, as important as the weapons they use. It lets them walk freely among their future victims, study them, pick them, and plan their fate, all while wearing a trustworthy and harmless smile. This pattern, this signature, is what makes them so dangerous. But, as we'll see, it's also what can eventually lead to their downfall. The need to repeat the same script is a compulsion they can't resist. From a criminology standpoint, the fascination lies in this methodical repetition. It's a window into the killer's mind. Killing stops being just an act and becomes an addiction, a compulsive need that must be fed. Each victim is another piece of a terrifying puzzle that only exists in the killer's mind. They are not simply killers. They are collectors, curators of death, driven by the need to perfect their ritual. That's why the act repeats. The satisfaction and release they get from the ritual is temporary. Soon, the psychological tension builds up again. The fantasies return with more intensity, and the hunger for control reappears, leading them to look for a new victim and repeat the cycle once more. This ritualized behavior gives them a feeling of power and almightiness that is completely missing in their public lives. For them, killing is the ultimate act of control. The choice of victim is rarely random. They are usually substitutes, symbolic representations of past figures who caused them pain or humiliation. The murder becomes a ceremony where the killer is the high priest, dictating every moment and savoring absolute domination over another human being. When the compulsion finally emerges, the act of killing turns into a deeply personal and meaningful ritual. It's not simply about ending a life. It's a carefully choreographed performance to fulfill a complex psychological script. Every detail matters, from the choice of victim to the method of murder and the staging of the crime scene. Each step is a deliberate recreation of their violent fantasies, a way to bring their inner world into physical reality. What's both fascinating and terrifying from a criminology perspective is their ability to manage and suppress their violent urges for long periods. They don't kill randomly or without thinking. They work in a cycle of increasing tension and release. They control their hunger, sometimes for months or even years, until the psychological pressure becomes unbearable and the need to act can no longer be contained. Behind the mask of the average person hides an extraordinary and all-consuming need. This isn't the chaotic, impulsive violence of someone who's lost control. On the contrary, the actions of a serial killer are often marked by a chilling degree of discipline and self-control. The double life of a serial killer is kept alive by a powerful hidden engine. A deep, never-ending hunger. But careful, this isn't hunger for food or money, but for something much more basic and unclear. Power, control, and the joy of breaking rules. Behind the calm face of the friendly neighbor or the perfect employee, there's a huge emptiness. This lack, born from the emotional emptiness of their past, demands to be filled. The everyday successes of their public life, like a job promotion or a steady relationship, don't truly satisfy them. They are simply parts of their disguise, empty achievements that can't calm the deep longings of their secret self. This hunger shows up as a constant obsession, always lurking. Their thoughts go back again and again to violent fantasies that, over time, become more detailed and demanding. They can spend hours planning their next act, checking out places and stalking possible victims. This whole planning process is by itself a huge source of pleasure and excitement. It's a secret game only they play, where they have all the power and knowledge. This hidden life gives them a feeling of being better than the unsuspecting world, a feeling of worth that their normal life could never give them. The hunger is for that almost godlike feeling of controlling life and death. Statistics draw a clear picture of who has this hunger. The vast majority, about 90%, are men. Their crimes usually start in their late 20s and go on into their 40s, a time when feelings of failure or not being good enough can clash with their physical peak. They almost always act alone, because their need for total control doesn't mix with any kind of partnership. The reasons are a bad mix of psychological factors: the need to have complete power over another, the joy of controlling a life or death situation, the twisted pleasure that comes from the act, and an urge so strong it feels as vital as breathing. In the end, the mask of being normal is just a cage for this hunger. The killer lives in a constant state of stress, balancing the demands of their public persona with the growing needs of their private obsession. But the hunger always gets stronger, and the mask, without fail, starts to crack. The time between their crimes can get shorter, or their methods become more daring as their confidence and urge grow. They are stuck in a cycle they created themselves, driven by a psychological need so deep that it covers every other part of who they are. Their double life isn't a choice, but a dark need to feed the monster inside. To truly understand the actions of a serial killer, we need to look beyond their behavior and dive into the physical makeup of the mind. What happens inside the brain of someone who can plan and carry out such horrible acts without batting an eye? Modern neuroscience gives us, well, a chilling look into this inner world, showing distinct and troubling patterns. When examined using brain imaging technology, The minds of many psychopathic killers show big differences. It seems there's a biological reason for their monstrous acts. A brain structure that's just different from a healthy person's. It's not just a bad mind. It's, in a way, a broken mind. The journey starts in the clean and quiet setting of an interrogation room. There, the killer's act often falls apart, not into regret, but into a strange emptiness. A close-up of their eyes shows not a storm of feelings, but a disturbing calm. This outward lack of emotion shows how their brain works inside. Brain studies show that key areas of the brain that handle emotions and control impulses act in unusual ways. It's like the parts that connect us to other people are broken or messed up, creating a cold and uncaring logical processing unit. Specifically, two brain areas are always involved: the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala, the emotional center that handles fear and empathy, is usually not very active in these people. This means that other people's suffering, or the danger of consequences for themselves, doesn't set off the usual emotional and physical alarms. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, which helps with making choices, morals, and controlling impulses, also shows less activity. This mix is really bad, because it creates a person who not only lacks empathy, but also has a harder time controlling their actions and understanding the moral weight of what they do. On the other hand, when these people plan or dream about their crimes, another part of the brain lights up with surprising strength. The reward centers, the same areas linked to pleasure and addiction, become super active. This suggests that, for them, the process of stalking, capturing and killing isn't a horrible need, but a deeply satisfying experience. The act of killing gives them a brain chemical rush as powerful as a drug. So, a bad cycle of addiction starts, where the brain craves the reward that comes with violence, pushing the killer to seek it again and again, trapped by their own cold biology. The emotional landscape where regret and compassion live is, for them, a desolate wasteland, which leaves them free to follow their darkest urges without the restraint of a conscience.
This cold way of looking at things explains the complete lack of regret. Guilt is a feeling that comes from empathy. It comes from the pain we feel when we realize we've caused suffering. Without the ability to share that pain, the idea of guilt means nothing. They can understand that society condemns their actions. They can even show regret if it helps them, for example, at a parole hearing. But inside, they feel nothing.
The emotional connection that forms the basis of human connection and morality is completely missing. This emptiness isn't a choice. It's a basic part of their psychological makeup. Pain, for them, is just an idea, a tool they can use to get what they want, but not an experience they can truly understand in others. This emotional detachment shapes their entire view of the world. From their perspective, other people aren't feeling beings with hopes and fears, but objects, pieces in a personal game of power and control. For some killers, the victim's death is simply a necessary outcome to fulfill their main fantasy, whether it's sexual or something else. The victim's life has no real value beyond their role in the killer's plan. For others, though, death isn't a side effect but the final goal. The act of ending a life is the purest way they show their power, the ultimate moment of total control over another person.
As a neuropsychiatrist, I can tell you they don't feel things like we do. They have what we call cognitive empathy, meaning they can understand in their minds that another person is suffering. They can recognize signs of fear, read social cues, and even guess how someone will react to something. This cognitive understanding is what makes them such good manipulators. They know exactly what to say to pretend to be sorry or to gain trust, precisely because they've studied human emotions like a scientist studies an insect. However, they completely lack emotional empathy, which is the ability to or share another person's emotional state. When they see someone cry, they don't feel a pang of sadness in their chest. If they see terror, their own heart rate doesn't speed up out of sympathy.
The brain differences in a serial killer's brain give rise to their most defining psychological trait: a deep and uncrossable void of empathy. A serial killer doesn't see themselves as a monster, but as someone who is right, even better than others. For them, rules and what's right are just in the way for other people, not for themselves. Ted Bundy said it best: "I don't feel guilty about anything. I feel sorry for people who feel guilt." Guilt is seen as being weak, their lack of caring as a good thing. Their victims aren't people, but things for them to use. So, their cold, self-focused way of thinking takes the place of any outside rules about what's right. And maybe the most scary thing in their mind, they haven't done anything wrong at all. The killer's need to express themselves becomes the detective's best weapon. When the echoes of the crimes harmonize, the hunt truly begins. These details show that these are not separate crimes, but the work of one predator. Progress comes with patterns, a knot, a wound, a phrase. The killer leaves clues of their inner world in every action. At first, everything seems like chaos, but the details pile up. Detectives look not just for physical evidence, but for the killer's psychological signature. Each crime leaves an echo. The scene is a text waiting to be read. Their compulsion changes them from ghosts to people we can predict. We don't catch them by how they kill, but by how they can't stop doing the same thing over and over. Their way of acting is as special as a fingerprint. Each murder adds facts to the map. Soon we can guess their next move. That strong urge creates a pattern that is easy to see and guess. Each crime tries to bring back the feeling of the first one, repeating victims, methods, and habits. What he thinks is his skill, for the police is a direct map to his door. The serial killer is a slave to his habits. Doing the same thing over and over is his weakness. For the investigators, it's the end of an obsessive journey. Understanding their need to repeat helped predict their end. The very patterns that gave them power are the chains that drag them to justice. Their double life crumbles, the monster is exposed for all to see. The capture is usually ordinary, far from the drama of their crimes. Sometimes a simple souvenir gives them away. Their need to show off is their downfall. The final mistake often comes from arrogance. They feel invincible and let their guard down. After months of work, the killer's pattern reveals their comfort zone. Catching them brings relief, but closure is just a dream. For every killer caught, others keep hunting in the shadows. The things that make them who they are don't just disappear with an arrest. Thousands of murders stay unsolved. The danger is still there. The monster never truly goes away. It's a constant shadow. The hunt is a never-ending cycle. The threat is still happening now. Modern anonymity makes it easier for them to hide in plain sight. The end of one story is just a break before the next predator shows up. The most unsettling thought isn't about the monsters we've caught, but about the ones we haven't been able to find. Official numbers give a grim and probably low estimate of this constant threat. They suggest that in a country like the United States, there are dozens of active serial killers at any given time. And these aren't just made-up numbers. They represent real people who are in the middle of their killing sprees, successfully avoiding the police and blending back into their communities after each act. These are the ones whose patterns haven't been linked yet, or whose methods are so clean that their victims are seen as separate incidents or accidental deaths. They are ghosts in the system. The vast majority of these unidentified killers will likely never be caught. It's a hard and scary fact to accept, but it's a statistical probability. They might die from natural causes, be put in jail for a different crime, or simply stop killing for reasons we can only guess at. Their legacy is a trail of unsolved cases and unanswered questions, a series of tragedies that will forever haunt the families of their victims and the investigators who looked for them. They represent a basic failure of the system, not because of a lack of effort, but because of how incredibly hard it is to hunt a predator who acts with cleverness, patience, and a deep understanding of how to use the weak spots in society. This unseen hunt is happening all around us, hidden in plain sight. The man you pass on the street, the woman who serves you coffee, the quiet person in the apartment next door, any of them could be living a double life of unimaginable horror. This isn't meant to make you paranoid, but to make us calmly aware of the truth. The mask of being normal is an incredibly strong shield. The killers who are still free are usually the best at using it. They are the most disciplined, the most patient, and the most skilled at keeping their lives separate. They are the ones who have perfected the art of being invisible, and they continue their hunt while we remain, perhaps, completely unaware. This reality forces us to face the limits of our ability to watch for evil. We can react to the patterns we see, but we are helpless against the ones we don't detect. Knowing that these killers are still out there, walking among us, is a deep and troubling truth. It highlights the fact that true safety is a fragile idea. The monster doesn't stop just because one of its kind has been put in jail. The hunt continues, both for the investigators looking for the known ones and for the unknown ones looking for their next victim. It's a silent and constant war fought in the shadows of our society. Facing the dark truth of an active, identified serial killer is not by any means about causing panic. Instead, it's a call to action, an urgent plea for deeper understanding. Exploring the minds of these people, figuring out what drives them, and mapping their minds isn't just a cool school project or something for fun. It's a key and really important part of keeping everyone safe and stopping bad things from happening. The more we learn about how these minds are formed and how they work, the better we'll be at spotting the warning signs, stepping in sooner, and maybe stopping these awful things before they even happen. Knowing things is our strongest weapon against the dark. Understanding the path from a tough childhood to a dangerous adult can help shape social rules and mental health support. Spotting early warning signs like being mean to animals, being alone a lot, and being really interested in violence lets parents, teachers, and communities take action. By dealing with the main reasons, like abuse, being left alone, and not getting enough emotional care, which often create these problems, we can try to fix the broken parts in a child's world before they become a hole too big to fill. This doesn't mean we're saying what the killer did is okay, but understanding where the monster comes from helps us try to stop it from being created in the first place. Also, really knowing about a killer's mind is super important for the police. It helps profilers make better pictures of the people they're looking for, narrowing down who might be a suspect and using their investigation time better. By knowing the killer's playbook, detectives can guess their actions better, protect possible victims, and set smarter traps. Every case, every mind profile, every investigation adds to a big pile of knowledge that makes the hunt more scientific and less about luck. Knowing the deep, dark hole is the first step to building a bridge over it, or at least putting a warning sign at its edge. In the end, our journey into the mind of a serial killer leaves us with a conclusion that's both scary and super important. The monster doesn't stop on its own. It's a constant force in human nature that we have to actively face. We must keep studying, learning, and staying watchful. The pull of its darkness must be turned into a strong promise to protect the light. Because only by truly knowing the deep, dark hole, by looking it straight in the eye and understanding its scary logic, can we hope to find a way to close it. For now it stays open, a quiet and patient danger waiting in the shadows.